In a strange place surrounded by lush forests and distant mountains, there are a lot of people, adventurers in a tower. They are minding their business when they hear a small voice calling all the humans to pay attention. And when they turn around, they find a talking cat trying to sell them something. The adventurers are surprised to see a wandering merchant cat, and they are smitten by his cuteness. They ask him what he is selling, and the cat shows them a cherry tomato. The humans are not impressed with the product after having high hopes for the cat. They were hoping for something grander, like legendary weapons or mysterious potions. A common cherry tomato was something that they could eat whenever they wanted to. But the cat tells them that they would be foolish if they judged the tomatoes before even appraising them. He claims that the tomato he was selling was nothing extraordinary, and they should check its status window to learn about its special features. The humans are curious, and they look at the status window of the magical cherry tomato. It could increase 0.1 MP for 10 minutes, and it could immediately burn 10 grams of fat when eaten. A man says that the value is too low, but the tomato has already found its target audience. The women are going crazy over a product that can burn 10 grams of fat just by consuming it. The cat smiles smugly and tells them that this tomato would cost them 0.5 tower coins per piece. But he is scared when the women adventurers rush at him, willing to buy all the tomatoes he has for even a higher price. A competition breaks out among them, and everyone wants to have the benefits for themselves. A man asks the cat where he got the tomatoes from, and the cat smiles and tells him that it was a secret. Then we are shown the scene of a field where those cherry tomatoes are being grown. A man picks up a tomato, and it seems like he is packing up for today. He tells his assistant, a rabbit carrying a trolley full of tomatoes, that they have harvested enough tomatoes for the day. The man tells his other workers to take a break too, and we see two rabbits trying to harvest another crop. The man then squeezes a tomato into a cup and asks a honeybee to give him some honey. She spits out a big drop of honey, and the man mixes the contents of the cup. His special energy drink is ready, and he drinks it along with his rabbit helpers. The honey and cherry tomato juice is a vitality drink, and the man says that this is how life should be. All his rabbits also raise their tiny glasses to show that they agree with him wholeheartedly. But then he is hit by a sudden quest. He has to distribute the honey and cherry tomato drink to the manager of the tower. There is no reward for the quest, but if he refuses to do it, the penalty would be disappointment. The farmer doesn't want to do it, but when another message pushes him, he agrees to complete the quest later. Just then, the cat merchant comes back to the farm. He calls the farmer Master Sejun and jumps on him. Sejun is also glad to see the cat back and says that he completed the work faster than he expected him to. The cat's name is T, and he tells Sejun that he sold out and earned a lot of tower coins. Sejun is impressed and thinks that it will not be long before he becomes famous in the tower. And when T hears this, he panics because he was keeping Sejun's name a secret. But the money-minded cat is already thinking of going to sell another round of crops after eating, as he wants to earn a lot of money. As T rushes to a black rabbit, asking him to refill his supplies, Sejun asks him to rest for a bit longer. The black rabbit shows exceptional skill at fishing and catches a few fish for T. Sejun watches T and thinks that he is addicted to earning money. But then he suddenly remembers something he had almost forgotten. Sejun takes a piece of charcoal and makes a symbol on a stone wall. The wall is half full of the same letter, and this one was the 30th. Sejun says that it has been 150 days today. He introduces himself as Park Sejun, and his class is a tower farmer. Sejun is going to harvest the crops, and the black rabbit and T jump on his shoulders and say that they will help him too. Sejun thinks back about how he has been in the tower for 150 days since he got lost. He looks at his fields, with different types of crops growing and rabbits and bees helping him out. And then he gets ready to do some work too. He then begins telling the story of how he survived after getting lost in the tower. 10 years ago, on an ordinary day, a 99-story black tower suddenly appeared in the middle of Gangnam. And it was not just in Gangnam but in every corner of the world. A total of 100 towers appeared, and every country started to investigate them. But all anyone could find was the height of the tower, which was 990 meters, and that it was made from a material strong enough to withstand nuclear bomb explosions. But then one day, people started coming out of the tower, walking right through the wall. There was an uproar, and the news reporters surrounded them. They asked the returners how they entered the tower in the first place, and the answer they got was that one day, a black hole appeared in front of them, and they got sucked into the tower. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves on the first floor of the tower. The news gathered everyone's attention, as the same incident was happening all over the world. The people who had gone missing a little while ago were suddenly found coming out of the tower. The following discoveries were made by collecting information from different people who escaped the tower, and they will be made public soon. All 100 towers are connected to one another, and when a person entered the tower, they would find themselves on the first floor. There, they would have to pick one role, either a warrior or a magician. A man is saying this in a press conference. He says that monsters start appearing on the second floor, and every time they clear a floor, they get different rewards. And if they were lucky enough, they would get a ticket like the man has. It was an item, and a rare one at that. People who were sucked into the tower were called the Awakened, and they could enter and exit the tower as they pleased. But if any ordinary person wanted to enter the tower, they would need this ticket. But it did not mean they could also climb up the floors of the tower. The reporters ask him what makes him think that people would volunteer to go into the tower, which had dangerous monsters. And the next question is, what was the purpose of the tower's appearance? The man does not know the answer to the second question, but he is going to tell everyone why one would go to the tower. On his cue, a woman comes forward with a small treasure box in her hand. And when she opens it, a heap of gold and jewels is piled up on the floor. The reporters stand up in shock, and the man on the podium tells them that he is sure of one thing. Going up the tower will give them money. This was all a way to get people interested in entering the tower. The Awakened Association had the monopoly over the tickets, and they were charging a ridiculously high amount of money for them. The news of the ticket prices rising from 150 million to 200 million won is live, and a woman is watching it on her smartphone. She is in a mall shopping for vegetables and starts talking with the cashier. She complains that people were putting their lives on the line to make money in the tower, but it was too much for them to charge $200 million for one ticket. She asks the young cashier if he agrees with her, and he nervously tells her that she is right. He was Sejun, 26 years old, and trying to save money for something special. He calculates his savings and finds that after deducting all his expenses, he had about $12 million to spare. He wonders how he could keep his dream alive if the prices for the tickets increased again. He is walking home after his job, and he asks himself, when will he be able to buy a ticket? But he knows that the better question was if he would ever be able to buy the ticket. He is tired of hustling so hard for money, but then he snaps out of his despair. He shouts at himself to keep his spirit up and not give up. He thinks that there will be some way to save more money. Just then, he thinks of the vegetables he had bought at a low price. He could plant them because he had heard that their price was also increasing. And he had seen an advertisement for an automatic vegetable grower recently. It was endorsed by none other than his favorite idol, Sarah. Sejun starts thinking optimistically, almost too optimistically. He thinks if he saves the money and buys a ticket, he might land a contract with a good guild. And then, if he cleared the tower, he would propose to his celebrity crush, Sarah. Sejun imagines how good that headline would look as he giggles. He cheers himself up, but then he notices something weird happening behind him. Sejun turns back to see a black hole-like portal and recognizes it as the vanishing point. It was the same phenomenon that sucked in the first generation of the Awakened. Sejun is excited. He thinks that the vanishing was here for him. He declares that he is ready to risk his life to climb up the tower and asks the black hole to take him in. But nothing happens. Instead, the hole starts shrinking, and Sejun is shocked, asking why it is getting smaller. But the hole is getting even smaller and is about to vanish. Sejun panics, saying that he will not let an opportunity like this pass him by. If the vanishing would not take him, he would come to it himself. As he says these words, Sejun jumps inside the hole. He lands on his face when he reaches the other side. He picks himself up and wonders if he really made it inside the tower. Sejun excitedly looks up, speaking of all the things he knew were on the first floor. He wanted to see the fancy chandeliers, marble plaza, and shops selling potions and equipment. But there is nothing like that here. Sejun is in a desolate hole somewhere in the wild. It is an underground dome with an opening at its top through which sunlight pours inside. Sejun gets up and looks at his surroundings, having no clue at all about where he was. He cannot believe it and screams in dissatisfaction, asking where the hell he was. And we see that he was somewhere far away from the tower, in the middle of a forest. Inside the top floor of the black tower, a crystal orb is glowing red and beeping. We see the silhouette of a dragon looking at that crystal ball with shock. The ball had detected a change in the tower, and the dragon must find the cause, because that was its duty as the manager of the tower. But neither the dragon nor Sejun have any idea about each other yet. Sejun recalls everything he had heard about the tower's first floor in the interviews with the Awakened. Someone said it was like a very spacious palace, and there were many things that they could buy there. Yet another man said in an interview that the training hall was the most important thing on the first floor. That is what Sejun had heard, but looking at his place, he wonders where he was. A small pond of water, an overhead opening for sunlight, and a cave that surrounded him on all sides. This was all he could see right now. Sejun is defeated by his fate, and he is sitting on a corner, visibly exhausted and utterly devastated. He had roamed the cave for an entire day and found no exit. There was no trading ground or store. In fact, there was nothing here at all. He had screamed for help, and no one heard his call, which meant no one was even around this place. And there is only one possibility that comes to his mind, and it terrifies him. He was lost inside the tower. As he is having a bout of panic, his phone alarm rings. Sejun is sure that his alarm is accurate, and it marked that one whole day had passed here. His stomach growls, and Sejun admits that he was hungry. He takes out all the things he had with him. A bottle of water, some cherry tomatoes, green onions, sweet potatoes, and an apple. That was all Sejun had with him, and he decided to eat the apple first. Eating an apple in the morning was something he liked, and the one he just ate is too delicious. But it is not nearly enough, and Sejun eats a sweet potato after it. And the texture, taste, and moistness of the sweet potato were something he was not expecting. It was much better than he expected it to be, even though it was raw. But because he was talking while eating, he choked on the sweet potato and drank water to swallow it. Then he lies down and thinks that it was a good meal. Sejun looks at the open roof of the cave and wonders how long he will stay here. He must find a way to escape before he runs out of food. He looks at the small amount of food he has and wonders how long it will last him. At this rate, he will die of starvation if he is not rescued. But Sejun kicks that thought out of his mind, determined that he will not die like this. It was his dream to get into the tower, and now that he was finally here, he was not going to die right away. He has an idea when he sees the apple core. Sejun takes it and plants it in the soil. Then he takes a green onion and snaps it near the base. He plans to eat the leaves as food and plant the roots to get more crops. He also takes 3 tomatoes and 2 sweet potatoes and plants them. Whatever is left now will be his food till the crops grow. Sejun says that he will do anything it takes to survive. That is, until his crop plants grow up. He addresses them and says that he will wait for them, they are his future. But just then, Sejun hears the scream of a monster that makes his hair stand on end. He is shocked. What he just heard was the sound of a monster. But there were no records of monsters on the first floor. And then everything turns dark, and Sejun looks up to find something even more shocking. The moon has eclipsed the sun, and Sejun knows that it was a blue moon. He hears the deafening scream of the monster again, and his body cannot take the pressure the scream puts on it. And just as the screams stop, Sejun notices a black dragon flying in the sky. He is mesmerized by the black dragon and says that it is beautiful. Then he loses consciousness and goes into a deep slumber. But something strange is happening with his green onions. They start shimmering at the top, and new growth starts. Sejun is woken up by his alarm, and his head is still aching. He looks at his phone to see how long he slept. And he gets startled when he finds that he was unconscious for 2 whole days. Because he slept for 2 days on hard ground, his back is aching, and he is much more tired than before. But as he sits down, complaining that his whole body is hurting, his back gets some support. Sejun turns back to see a plant and wonders where a tree came from. But then he looks at it again and finds that it was a green onion plant, the same one he had planted. All of them had grown, and they were gigantic. Sejun is perplexed. He wonders if green onions could grow this big in just 2 days. He realizes that this unnatural growth must be a property of the tower. He had seen a documentary that taught how the growth of plants was dependent on the environment. And he is sure that the tower's power has affected the green onions. Sejun is hit by the realization that maybe other crops are also ready now. And as he excitedly checks them, he finds that tomato seedlings have also emerged from the ground. He is excited about his plants growing, but then he notices that the green onion plants are blocking sunlight. He decides to cut them off so that his tomato seedlings can also get sunlight. He breaks the green onions a fair bit above their base, and it is a harder task than he thought. Sejun has finished harvesting, and he wonders what the green onion leaf would taste like. He takes a bite and burns his mouth because the leaf was spicier than anything he had tasted before. He splashes his mouth with the water of the pond, complaining that the leaf is much more spicy than the original one. But even though his mouth was scorched, his stomach did not feel the heat. Sejun thinks that he can get used to this, and whenever he needs something spicy, this will be great. He decides to dry the other green onions and save them for later. He goes back to his regular sitting spot, a rock in the center of the cave, and starts eating tomatoes. The sun never set in the tower, but occasionally there were instances where the moon eclipsed it, and this phenomenon was called the blue moon. But the blue moon did not happen until the 10th floor. Sejun believed that he was somewhere on the first floor, but now he is not sure. And what was even more confusing was the dragon. It was not an illusion, and Sejun does not know which floor it was found on. When the tower appeared 10 years ago, one of the major guilds, called the Phoenix Guild, cleared the 37th floor. It was an achievement that has not been topped yet. And because of this, the information about floors 30 to 37 was kept secret from the world. But there was plenty of information about the floors below 30. The floors until the 10th floor had skeleton monsters. From 11 to 20 it was goblins, and from 21 to 30 it was orcs. Sejun had heard some rumors about spider monsters being found on floors above 31. But there was no surety of the news. Yet he had never heard anything about a dragon. He had never heard of anything mildly similar to it, not even lizard monsters. Sejun is lying down as he wonders if he is on a floor so high that no one has yet reached it. But then water drops fall on his face, and Sejun gets up. Was it raining in the tower? He had heard that the weather was almost always pleasant, and as he looks up, the sky is clear too. But he spots something moving very fast and gets scared that it is a monster. But the creature he just saw comes forward, and it is a cute rabbit drooling over Sejun's crops. Sejun is surprised and wonders if the rabbit was a monster too. The rabbit jumps down the hole, and Sejun rushes to catch it. But the rabbit uses his head as a stepping stone and lands safely on the ground. He hops to the green onion plants, and Sejun realizes that the rabbit was something extraordinary. The rabbit points at the green onion plants, and Sejun asks if he wants to eat them. The rabbit gives his response, and Sejun understands that he wants to eat. He breaks the leaf of the green onion and gives it to the rabbit, who gladly takes it. He eats it greedily, and Sejun tells him that he could have more if he liked it. And then Sejun notices that the plants have already grown back. At this rate, he will have to harvest them twice daily. But the rabbit starts saying something loudly, and Sejun finds he is not talking to him. He looks above, to the entrance of the cave, and finds another rabbit coming towards them. She lands and hands the first rabbit a straw hat and a watering can, and they both stand in front of Sejun. Sejun is surprised to see another rabbit, but then he thinks that the two are somehow related. He asks the rabbits if they are married, and they tell him that he is right. Sejun starts thinking of keeping a diary of his life in the tower, and on the first page of that diary, there will be the story of a rabbit couple who joined him in the cave. The rabbit couple starts working for Sejun, and their job is to help him raise and harvest the crops. They are chatting with each other as they do their jobs, and Sejun can tell that they are a great couple, even though he does not understand them. But he wonders how it came to this. Yesterday, after the rabbits introduced themselves to Sejun, they told him that they wanted to live in the cave, and they looked too cute as they tried to persuade him. Sejun felt that he might die from a cuteness overdose and accepted their request with a condition. He told the rabbits that they could not live here for free. If they helped him in farming, he would consider letting them stay. He thought it would dissuade the rabbits a bit, but instead of hesitating, they jumped at him and started cuddling. And Sejun had to show great restraint to not let them in without a test, because cuddling with their soft fur made him want to adopt them both. Now he is sitting in his position, watching the rabbits work. He thinks that the rabbits were using their cuteness to control him, but he lets that slide. But on that note, he asks the rabbits if the tools they were using were items. The husband rabbit had a watering can that seemed to have an endless supply of water, and Sejun is not sure about it. But it seemed to him that the wife rabbit had a magic pocket that contained all the tools she needed for farming. Sejun says that he was jealous and wished that he had such a wonderful item. The rabbits have completed harvesting the green onions, and they are excited to show them to Sejun. Sejun tells them to dry the green onions and starts inspecting other crops too. But the rabbits are looking at Sejun with eager and impatient eyes. They are asking him a question, and Sejun understands what they want. He tells them that they passed his test, and now they could live in the cave. The rabbits jump for joy upon hearing the good news and start talking about something. They rush to a corner of the cave, and Sejun wonders what they are up to now. The wife gives her husband a shovel, and he starts digging. And in no time, he creates a home for himself and his wife. The wife places a floral wreath on the door to their new house and welcomes her husband to enter. But he is exhausted from digging and building a house and can barely stand. Sejun approaches them and says that the husband rabbit was great for making a house so quickly. The husband rabbit gives him a thumbs up, but then he feels his wife's hand on his shoulder. She is blushing and cutely pointing at the door, and the husband is terrified. He is scared, but his wife drags him along for some sweet lovemaking. Sejun hears the sounds coming from their house and wishes the husband all the best. But he is crying inside, as he is jealous of him for having a wife. That jealousy does not last long, and Sejun walks back to his spot. He says that it was boring to be alone in the cave, and now, thanks to the rabbits, he had someone to help him and something cute to look for. As he says this, Sejun lies down on the dried onion leaves. Smoke starts rising from under his back, and Sejun feels something hot on his back. He jumps into a standing position and rolls on the ground, feeling that his back is on fire. He is wondering what just happened as he gets up, and he sees the reason behind it. The plastic water bottle filled with water was acting as a lens and burning the dried onion leaves. Inspiration finds Sejun, and he goes into full wild survival mode. He starts acting like the host of a popular survival show. He says that the environment in the tower was hard, but he did not give up. He had a plastic bottle and dried green onions that helped him survive. Coming back to his normal self, Sejun says that he can use the plastic bottle as a convex lens to start a fire. He had learned that from a famous survival show. But it does not work, and Sejun starts to cry and whine. The leaves only gave out a little smoke but did not catch fire. As he sighs, thinking about what he's doing wrong, a small spark lights up, and Sejun has found the missing piece. The rabbits come out of their house and spot Sejun doing something they do not understand. He is blowing wind on the pile of dried leaves, hoping that they catch fire. The rabbits approach him, and Sejun asks them to blow wind on the leaves while he uses the bottle as a lens. They start working together, and Sejun begs for a fire to start. And just after a little while of trying, the leaves catch fire. Sejun is elated. He finally has fire. He looks back at the onion plants and decides to cook them.